Welcome to this explainer. Have you ever wondered what exactly happens in the eyes of the law, from the literal second a crime is committed all the way to the final gavel strike? Well, today we're going to completely demystify the life cycle of a crime. We'll be zeroing in on felonies and criminal liability, specifically looking through the lens of Book 1 of the Revised Penal Code and its related laws. We're going to take a highly technical, complex legal architecture and translate it into a clear, easy-to-follow journey. Okay, here is our roadmap for today. We've got 6 key areas to cover: anatomy of a felony, determining criminal liability, modifiers of liability, the system of penalties, extinguishing liability, and finally, civil liability ex delicto. This will guide us step by step from the initial unlawful act to punishment and restitution. Let's start right at the beginning with Section 1, the anatomy of a felony. So think about this. What actually elevates a simple mistake or just a really terrible decision into a punishable felony? It's not just about doing something wrong, right? There are very strict, specific criteria that have to be met, both out in the physical world and inside the offender's head. It's kind of like a two-piece puzzle. To establish criminal liability, 2 things usually have to intersect. First, you need the actus reus, which is the actual physical act or omission, like swerving a car. But honestly, just as crucial is the mens rea, or the guilty mind. Did you swerve to avoid hitting a stray dog? Or did you swerve intentionally to crash into your neighbor's mailbox? The law absolutely needs both the physical action and the mental state driving it to build a crime. Now, diving a bit deeper into that mental state, a felony generally involves one of 2 things. It's either dolo, meaning intentional deceit. Think of plotting an elaborate bank heist. Or it's culpa, which is fault through sheer negligence or lack of foresight, like texting while driving and causing a massive pileup. You don't always have to have some evil master plan to commit a felony. Sometimes being incredibly reckless is more than enough to cross that legal line. And, a crime is rarely just a single instantaneous flash. It has a whole life cycle. The law carefully breaks it down by stages of execution. Was the crime merely attempted? Was it frustrated by some outside cause before it could be finished? Or was it fully consummated? Interestingly enough, the law also recognizes things like spontaneous desistance, where an offender actually backs out before finishing the act, and even impossible crimes, where the crime was literally doomed to fail from the start, but the criminal intent was still dangerously clear. Moving right along to Section 2, determining criminal liability. Let's look at who is actually on the hook. When a crime goes down, liability is essentially sliced up into a pie of participation. You've got the principals, who take a direct, hands-on role. Then you have accomplices who cooperate and accessories who jump in to help after the fact. But it doesn't stop there. There are specialized roles under specific laws, like fencers under Presidential Decree 1612, or folks who obstruct criminal prosecution. The system even looks at conspiracy and proposal. Yep, sometimes just agreeing to commit a felony with someone else is a crime all on its own. But what happens if the criminal act goes completely wrong? Well, the law is way ahead of you. Criminal causation still applies through 3 really fascinating scenarios. Say you throw a rock at one window but totally miss and smash another. That's aberratio ictus, a mistake in the blow. If you attack someone in an alley thinking it's your rival but it's actually a total stranger, that's error in personae, a mistake in identity. And if you just mean to punch someone, but they fall, hit their head, and suffer massive trauma, that's praeter intentionem, where the result far exceeds the intent. Basically, the law anticipates human error and holds you liable anyway. Okay, on to Section 3, modifiers of liability, because in the legal world, things are rarely just black and white. Liability isn't just a fixed switch. It's more of a sliding scale modified by the actual circumstances. We have justifying circumstances like pure self-defense under Article 11, where technically no crime is committed. Then there are exempting factors under Article 12, like minority or battered woman syndrome. On the flip side, your liability can be dialed down by mitigating circumstances or cranked way up by aggravating elements, like using a loose firearm or using information and communications technology to commit the act. There are even alternative circumstances like intoxication and absolutory causes where public policy steps in to say, hey, no penalty here. And what if someone just refuses to learn that lesson? The justice system comes down incredibly hard on repeat offenders. They strictly categorize repeat commissions into 4 brackets: recidivism, quasi-recidivism, habituality, and habitual delinquency. Each of these has a highly specific definition based on the timeline and the types of previous convictions, and they will radically compound the severity of the new penalty. That brings us to Section 4, the system of penalties. Once liability is locked in, how does the state actually respond?
Well, the courts have to navigate this incredibly intricate classification and graduation system to figure out the exact imposable penalty. They classify penalties into principal and accessory types, weighing everything from the stage of execution to all those modifiers we just talked about. They even factor in preventive imprisonment, which is the time the accused already sat in jail during the trial. And hey, if an offender can't afford to pay a mandated fine, they might be looking at a subsidiary penalty of even more jail time.
Now, here's a really fascinating numerical rule when it comes to serving successive sentences: the threefold rule. It's a vital constraint that basically caps the maximum time an offender can serve for multiple penalties at exactly 3 times the duration of their most severe penalty. It's designed to keep sentences proportional, so they don't literally extend into infinity.
But listen, serving a sentence doesn't always mean sitting behind bars. The architecture of the law actually includes several alternative avenues. Depending on the specific crime, the system allows for community service, release on recognition, the application of the indeterminate sentence law, or probation. It really highlights a justice system that is actively trying to balance strict, hard punishment with a chance for genuine rehabilitation. Let's shift gears to Section 5, extinguishing criminal liability. How does this whole process finally come to a close? The absolute final end of liability is what the law calls total extinction. Naturally, this happens if the convict passes away or if they just fully serve out their sentence. It also happens through prescription, which is basically the legal time limit running out. But get this, it can also happen through an absolute pardon, a sweeping government amnesty, or in some highly specific crimes if the offender and the offended party actually get married. Crazy, right? Then you have partial extinction. This is where the slate isn't wiped entirely clean, but the penalty is significantly reduced. This happens through executive clemency, like a conditional pardon or a commutation of the sentence. Offenders can literally earn their time back through the Good Conduct Time Allowance, or GCTA, and through parole. In these cases, good behavior becomes a very real currency.
For our final act, Section 6, Civil Liability ex delicto, because the story definitely doesn't end with just the state and the offender.
Here is a fundamental rule. Every single person criminally liable for a felony is also civilly liable. And here's the kicker. Even if an offender is legally exempted from criminal liability because of minority or insanity, that civil obligation to the victim often survives anyway. The law ensures that the actual material harm caused to the victim is addressed, whether primarily by the offender or subsidiarily by someone else. And compensating the victim follows a very strict 1-2-3 process. Step 1 is restitution, physically returning the stolen item if at all possible. Step 2 is reparation, paying to fix any damage done to that property. And finally, Step 3 is indemnification, which is covering any other consequential ripple effect losses suffered by the victim or their family. So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a thought. We've just walked through the precise, almost mathematical formulas for intent, execution, and punishment under the law. But how do these rigid legal classifications actively mold the messy, everyday reality of our justice system on the ground? It's something to chew on. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into the architecture of criminal liability. Keep questioning and keep learning.